Hi, we are working our way to the end of all of the different required elements for a rhetorical analysis or any good essay that covers all the bases to make a very strong point. So today we're going to talk about the counterargument and the rebuttal, and we're going to talk about why it's important to voice a counterargument and then learn kind of how to structure these things. So let's kind of focus in on where we are. We talked about how to write an introduction. I'm going to refer you back to that original video where we talked about zooming into the actual point of your essay and making a personal connection with your readers and then giving your thesis statement. Then you're going to move into your actual interpretation of this music video, and we talked about how to kind of structure that. That might take 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. It can take as many as you'd like. Then you're going to give support for your interpretation using some kind of outside sources. After that, or potentially right after you introduce your interpretation, it really depends. Your counterargument might come in a place that makes most sense, but often it does come after you've finished explaining your major ideas. You're going to incorporate a counterargument and a rebuttal, and that might take, it could take a couple of paragraphs as well if there are lots of objections to your interpretation. And then you'll have a conclusion, and that's going to be a separate video. So what is a counterargument, and what is the logic for including one? So a counterargument is just a moment where you acknowledge how another viewer might interpret this differently. So we talked about resisting using totally personal interpretations for rhetorical analysis, but the reality is because there are so many complexities to each given multimodal composition, because you can look at so many different things, so many colors, so many characters, so many moving pieces and parts, there really are tons of valid and reasonable interpretations. And so yours might be one that someone would disagree with. So it's a good moment to acknowledge when someone might disagree. And then the rebuttal, you don't just say, yeah, someone might think that my thing is stupid and then move on and not say anything about it. You have to say, well, even if they would disagree because of this, my position still holds up to scrutiny because I can point to lots of other things, maybe additional support from sources. Maybe you have different parts of the music video that you can pull from that support your reading again. And you say, you know what? Not only do I have better evidence for my position, but your position is misguided for a couple of reasons. So why would we want to include this? Well, the thing is, you're trying to persuade your audience to believe you. And what's better than making them think that you have thought through the whole thing and that you are doing so in a fair way? I am often listening to a podcast or a YouTube video or the news or something, and an author, a creator is talking about something and they're using really bad reasoning, and I'm yelling sometimes, not just quietly simmering. I'm like, what are you talking about? Haven't you considered this XYZ? Like, that would totally change what you're talking about. If you can actually respond to a reader or a viewer before they have gotten mad that you're forgetting something, that will make them way more likely to be persuaded by your argument. And you will answer their silent, or in my case, yelling out loud kinds of concerns. So the counter argument, if you are trying to figure out, well, I have my interpretation. Imagine what the haters would say. What is a problem, a potential problem with that interpretation? How is it that someone might disagree? And then you're going to express that disagreement and explain why you're still right. So how are you going to structure this? What do you need in order to write a paragraph or several paragraphs that do this role, that perform this function? Well, first you have to actually acknowledge that there is another reading. So a really easy way to phrase this, and I know it's kind of formulaic, but you can actually, I'm giving you permission to steal this wording straight from it. Some might say, or some viewers would think, blah, 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 blah. Or it might seem like we could interpret this scene in a different way. So that's acknowledging the other viewpoint. Then it's a huge bonus if you can concede, have a concession to say why you think that's reasonable, because again, you want people to be on your side, and people love it when you show them that you don't think they're stupid. People are way more willing to listen to you if you're like, that's a good point in this way, blah, blah, blah. But let's look at it another way. Like, it's all about being easy and kind to your reader. So you say, you know what? Actually, this makes some sense. I could see where you're coming from because of this. But then you're gonna pivot and you're gonna indicate your disagreement. You're gonna say, but if we look closely, or if we actually take a look at this, it's not quite right what you're saying. And you wanna either point out a flaw in their argument. So you say, when you say this, it means this thing, and that's not right. What does it overlook? What other evidence can you provide that shows that this interpretation isn't quite right? And then you always want to go back to the context of the whole piece. So remind them of the major scene that's happening above and beyond the small detail of the bad reading that they're relying on. So what about the whole video might go against this reading? So let me remind you that eagle eye watchers and good listeners of these videos, and if you're reading my emails, you're noticing that my interpretation, the example that I've been using in all of these videos, is a bad reading. I don't think it's a good reading. I do not think that we can reasonably interpret that they used these like disconnected shots because they wanted us to feel anxiety about apartheid. I think maybe a smaller claim might be that we are reminded of apartheid throughout, but I don't think it's for the purposes of creating anxiety. So it was really easy for me to write a counter argument for my own interpretation because I disagree with my interpretation. And I put this bad reading because I wanted to make sure that you guys didn't take it. And if you do, I'm gonna be like, oh, this is a bad reading. This is a personal interpretation and not a rhetorical analysis. Okay, so let's take a look at a good example. And we don't need to see me all that much. Okay, there, that's better. So everything in orange is the actual counter argument. So you can use this to help you structure your own. Everything that's green is a concession. That means I tell them, yeah, you're right. You got something there going there. Then I'm going to have evidence to prove against their reading, and that's going to be in blue. So you have to bring up more evidence. And then you can't just put evidence. You have to explain your evidence, and then you have to explain why their reading is wrong. So I'm going to read this through. Some viewers might say the video isn't really about anxiety, since it feels pretty relaxed overall. The music is mellow, people are smiling, and no one looks like they're in danger. Yeah, I completely agree. This is not about anxiety. But here I'm going to concede. This makes sense at first. Janet Jackson is the center of the club scene, and she looks happy and confident, not scared. And then I'm going to pivot. But a closer look at other parts of the videos tells a different story. And then I'm going to give so I probably should have put a different color to show a pivot. So a closer look is a pivot where you say, okay, I'm moving away from my concession into my explanation of why you're wrong. And then it's evidence. Early on, we see a bathroom entrance with a sign that says Europeans only, showing that even small everyday spaces like bathrooms were split apart by race. This is a terrible thing because if someone really argued this, you'd be like, yeah, but there are only Black South Africans in those bathrooms. So obviously it's like a subverting thing. It's sort of like almost, maybe it's a fantastical reimagining of that space as a more free place and therefore not anxious. But I'm showing you formally why this reading is formally what I'm looking for, but conceptually very stupid and confused. You get my drift? Okay. So early on, I'm giving evidence. We see a bathroom entrance that says Europeans only, showing that even small spaces like bathrooms were split apart by race. The bathroom scenes themselves also look different from the club. The lighting turns cool and blue, and the mood feels heavier and less joyful. Okay, and I put timestamps to support this. Then I'm going to explain myself. The shift in color and tone suggests that not every space in the video is meant to feel safe or fun. Okay, but then I'm going to move to a different piece of evidence and a different reason that they're wrong about their counter argument. There's also a bigger reason people in the video might feel uneasy even while dancing and drinking. A 1960 Time magazine article, South Africa Drink for All, explains that Black South Africans were banned from drinking liquor and that breaking those liquor laws made up 25% of all arrests in the country at this time. Okay, so that's evidence, and then I'm moving to explaining it. Since the club scene is a bar, this context matters a lot. Even if people look like they're enjoying themselves, they would still likely worry about being caught and arrested. A reading that only looks at the smiling dancers misses these signs. When we look at the video, at the whole video, the Europeans only sign, the cold blue lighting in the bathroom, and the real risk of arrest just for drinking, it's clear that the happy moments in the club don't erase the danger underneath. The video keeps reminding us that even fun spaces were controlled and watched, which fits the bigger pattern of anxiety running through the whole piece. Here's the thing, again, I would say, yes, it does keep giving us those signs, but I don't think it's telling us that it indicates anxiety. I think it's telling us that it indicates some kind of hopefulness about what it means to gather and to be with your community. But I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to affect your own interpretations of this video. So hopefully that will get you started on writing your counter argument and rebuttal for your first draft.